Mercedes updates for 2023 season. If there's one team that we expect to perform much better than they did in the 2022 season, that has to be Mercedes. The Brackley-based team has struggled a lot with performance, and that's something that they're looking to address in the 2023 season. So what are some of the things they can do in order to boost their performance? According to Wolff, it would completely change the philosophy of the car. Stick around with us to find out more about the W14 and what it's supposed to look like. If Mercedes learned one thing out of the 2022 season, it's that the philosophy of their car hasn't been the best. The 2022 season saw a massive upshift in the technical regulations, which saw the cars struggling with the aerodynamical phenomenon of porpoising. Things got to the extent of the FIA intervening and changing some of the rules, such as the flexibility of the floor and introducing metrics for the porpoising limitations. Still, Mercedes hasn't been quite able to find the pace they're looking for, which is why they've struggled a lot to keep up with Ferrari, and especially Red Bull. The Brackley-based team is still in the fight with Ferrari for P2 in the Constructors' Championship, and although they are unlikely to catch up with the Italian team, they are still hoping to have at least one more win in the 2022 season. Whether or not this will happen, Mercedes needs to focus on the 2023 season and forget this one as soon as possible. So what can be done by their side in order to improve the performance of the W14, or the next version of the Mercedes car? According to George Russell, they've managed to take the right direction by using the W13 as a learning tool, saying that he's confident that the team will be much better than what they've displayed in the 2022 season. When talking about the development of the 2023 car and the way that the W14 will look, Russell said, "I think nothing is off the table. For sure, we've got a pretty unique design with the side pods. It's not off the cards that we will continue with that design, but it is equally not off the cards that we will completely change philosophy. But ultimately, whether we have the wide side pods or the narrow side pods, that isn't the performance differentiator. There's more to it." So, is there a real possibility that we'll see Mercedes going the way of the bulky side pods, something that Ferrari has done, or take the downwash side pods like Red Bull? Stick around with us to find out more. According to Toto Wolff, there's a huge need for change in the DNA of the car, but that doesn't mean that they will change the entire design of it. This brings us to the fact that Mercedes is likely to introduce a variety of changes, but they aren't likely to change the no-pod side pod design due to the fact that it will take them even further down the grid. The DNA of the car is going to change for next year, that's clear. It doesn't necessarily mean that our bodywork is going to look very different, but certainly what is part of the DNA of the car, the architecture of the car, will change for next year. This is something that was also emphasized by Mike Elliott, saying that the W13 was one of the most troublesome cars that the team had to deal with. However, there is good in every bad situation, and the fact that the team was able to learn from this version of the car in order to produce as better a version of the W14 as possible is still something that they need to be grateful for. That is something that Elliott himself shared, adding that it would be very difficult to win the first race of the season with how Ferrari and Red Bull are performing, but it would be far from impossible. Prior to the US GP, Hamilton and Russell had a lot of hope when it came to winning the race. The qualifying pace wasn't there, as they both finished P5 and P6 just to start P3 and P4 respectively after Leclerc and Perez took engine penalties. Hamilton had a decent shot to win the race, but it seems like Red Bull's straight-line speed, something that Mercedes could have bragged about in the previous 7 seasons, is one of the factors that not a single team can beat on the grid. When talking about his performance in Austin, as well as where the team stands when it comes to the development of the 2023 version of the car, Hamilton said, "I think under DRS, they're like 35 kilometers an hour faster than us. If we're behind them, we're like 22 kilometers an hour faster, I think it is, with DRS on the back straight." So he came from a long way back. But even without the DRS, I think there's still something like 8 kilometers an hour up on us. So we've got a lot of time being lost on the straight, probably 4/10 at least a lap. And so we've got some improvements to make for next year's car. So what does Mercedes hope for in the 2023 season? The new direction is guaranteed, as they cannot produce the same output and expect different results. That is something that has been emphasized by the entire leadership of the team. However, we still don't know whether the team will introduce some massive changes in the car because changing the DNA is a huge thing to do. but that doesn't clarify what exactly you're going to introduce when it comes to changes. This is something that Mercedes has carefully worked on and has been very aware of, not leaking information to the press more than they should. So far, Russell and Wolff are the only ones that have spoken about some directions they're taking with the new car, but even Russell himself said that the team needs to be very careful when talking about the 2023 car. The fact that they have opposition they have to take care of is something very tricky, and every team out there will try to delay the design of the car as much as they can. I don't want to go into too much detail because it's something that we worked very hard on to understand, and hopefully will give us an advantage into next year. So I don't want to say anything that will potentially benefit our rivals. But at the end of the day, every single car is different. I have to say, I've mentioned a couple of times this year that I feel like we've understood our car and we're on the right track, but we have been set back with a couple of oddities that we weren't expecting. But I think we've had enough races now that we've gone through so many different scenarios that I can't really imagine there's going to be another one that catches us by surprise. We've had the porpoising issues, we've had the ride issues, we've had the car touching the ground and damaging the floor issue, said Russell. According to Wolff, there is one good thing about the fact that Mercedes is experiencing the worst season so far, and that is the fact that they will have increased wind tunnel time for the 2023 season. If a team